Let's open that up. Now, basic instructions here, just basically saying, hey, follow the step-by-step that's inside of the PDF that you guys will download. Here it tells you also about renaming your logic session. This one's going to be last name, your last name, of course, underscore your first name, underscore RPR EQs. And then you're going to upload that once you've finished, of course. Do all the stuff in the steps, and you're going to upload that. We'll get to see all the work that you've done and be able, from that, be able to see if you need any extra help if you're not getting the stuff. You're going to be also uploading 2 audio files. The cool thing about these assignments is the first 3 tracks, for sure, I'm going to walk you through and tell you what to turn, what to do, listen, see what you're doing, understand what this knob does, what this knob does. And afterwards, you get to try it yourself on track 4 and 5. And these tracks are the ones that you're going to be basically turning in. I'm going to give you problems that you're going to be fixing with an EQ. And then screenshots also for track 4 and 5 with the plugin open. The screenshots are kind of a backup for us to make sure that, if something happened to the logic session, I could still at least be able to see that, hey, you still need help on this or no. But the logic session is still required because it really is able to tell me a lot more. Here are the 2 things that you're going to be downloading. So, of course, the logic file and the instructions, the equalizers and filters instructions. I've already downloaded them. They're sitting right here on my desktop for you guys. I guess I don't need this zip file anymore. It was just to show you guys. And then, as always, remember, use your grading checklist. I've had a couple students where I pointed this out to them. They really noticed that, yeah, this definitely helps me, because it tells me everything that I need to turn in. So after you finish the assignment, just go through and go, okay, did I bounce down track 4? Yes. Repaired audio. In other words, is it bounced down with your EQ settings that you fixed? And we want it as an MP3 at the highest quality. Then, did I submit a screenshot of that same track 4, with the EQ settings? Did I do track 5 with the EQ settings? The audio. Same thing with the screenshot of track 5. Now the next thing you'll see is that tracks, in other words, inside of your logic file that you'll be turning in, you'll see right here, logic file, we check to make sure that you've done the assignment, that all the other settings are done the way we asked you to. And the next thing you'll see is, did you name the project correctly? In other words, is it your last name, your first name, RPR EQs? And as you see, lastly, late, which I hope nobody's late on. That's a horrible amount of points to lose. It brings you down to a B from a possible A. So let's see. I have got some questions here. The PDF to be one on the instruction page. Yes, this is the PDF, the one that's on the instructions page, or the assignment page for dynamic processors, EQs, and filters. You'll notice that the first 3, I'll go back real quick, are called dynamic processors, EQs and filters, dynamic processors, compression or compressors, dynamic processors, noise gates. That's because all of these work with the dynamics of your signal. They physically change something in the signal. Later you'll be touching on in week 3, time-based processors. They don't work on the dynamics. You're just adding to the original signal. And I'll explain a little bit more in depth with that as well. But we're going to be messing with this week just dynamics. So we're going to change the signal to make it the way we want. Back into the EQ. So you saw how the grading checklist will help you guys out a lot. Please use it. And then at the bottom here, underneath it, this is where I was talking about, we send you to lynda.com if you want to have additional information. And in the lynda.com video, I want to quickly explain that they're going to be using this plugin. This is an EQ from Pro Tools. And This is the logic EQ, the channel EQ. Notice they look quite different, but they do the exact same thing. As long as you understand the parameters, which is what I'm going to be explaining, frequency, amplitude or gain, and then Q or bandwidth, you'll notice they're down here the same way. Q, here's your frequency, here's your gain. This is all just displayed in different ways. Each EQ will show you the exact same things. It's a matter of just understanding what they are, and then you just look at the labels. Oh, that knob says Q. Okay, I know what that is. That knob says amplitude. Definitely know what that is. It's level or gain. And then frequency, of course. That's selecting your peak frequency or your bell frequency, which we'll explain. So don't be confused by it. The video is still explaining the exact same thing. It's just using a different EQ. Which brings me to, if you guys start going through, let me open this up. There it is. You'll notice how this literally walks you through, explains EQs, and then we start off, here with track 1. You'll notice I start explaining a graphic EQ. See, there's graphic EQs and semi-parametric EQs and also parametric EQs. Those are the 3 main types of EQs. Now, you might hear tube EQ, passive EQ. Those are different electronics that do the same circuitry as some of the electronic EQs, like this graphic EQ. You may have seen one like this maybe in your home stereo from your parents, or in your car. Some cars had the old graphic EQ where you had little knobs to move up and down. A lot of more modern stuff, of course, is all you have to go to a certain screen on your radio now. But it used to be a fader or slider that you would have at different frequencies. So you'll notice a graphic EQ has just one knob that basically is selective at a certain frequency, and all you have is amplitude. You could either go positive or negative. So you're adding gain to the signal at that frequency, or you're attenuating that frequency. Now, with these graphic EQs, here's the plug-in one that you'll see when it opens up as far as logic. I've set this up already for you. You'll see this one's a 31 band. You can change it if you just click on here, and it'll go to either a 10 band or a 31 band. You have 2 choices. By going to a 10 band, let me see if I've got a picture of it here. No, I don't. Let's just open that up and show you. I'm going to take that session. Where'd it go? There it is. All right. So I can switch it from 10 band to 31 band. And you notice when I go to 10 band, there isn't as many frequencies selected. So this one gives you a little less control than that 31 band. Ultimately, a 31 band will give you a lot more control. And remember, you only have the capability of amplitude up or down. You can't change the frequency on a graphic. When you get to the parametric, there we actually have right here, this top line that's our frequency. Notice that that yellow ball moves back and forth. That's selecting my frequency. Second level stuff here is my amplitude, and notice I could bring it up or down. I'll leave it up for a second. And the next one is my Q, or bandwidth. Bandwidth is, you notice it's selecting all these frequencies and then just kind of tapering them to that center frequency, which is the one I chose, 130. That's the tip of the bell. But I could change that. I can shrink it down so it only affects frequencies like here. It's only affecting from about 100 hertz to about 200 hertz. If I gain it a little bit more, you'll see it widens it a little bit, but still it's more or less just a peak. I can also, I'm sure you're noticing, I could change this numerically, or there's ways of going to the graphic and changing the parameters right here, and you'll notice they kind of follow along. You could also turn on and off that EQ. So after you've EQ'd something and you want to hear just, oh, did I make that much change on that one? I could mute just that setting right there, that one parametric. or I could turn the whole parametric EQ off to hear what the original signal sounded like, and then turn it back on to hear my EQ'd signal. All right, so I'm showing you a couple different things, and remember, all this stuff is in that PDF for you guys. Let's see if I missed anything. I'm looking through the chat window, and no, not really seeing anything. Okay, so let's try, first of all, how to start and stop. Of course, you could come over here, hit play. And right now, let me move this. You'll notice every channel is muted. We do this on purpose because we don't want you to play all these sounds at once. It won't make any sense. Each track is its own little lesson. We only want you to play one at a time. And let me move this guy back up. Let me shrink this down a little bit. You could grab corners of any plugin and just bring them down a little bit if you needed to. Right here, white noise is selected. If I solo this, I'm going to bring it down because I'm not sure how loud it will be for you guys. So I turn down the main output, but I'm going to solo that. Now, you should hear a noise that basically sounds like an old TV where it's in between stations. Or this could be a radio, you know, an old analog style radio that has, again, between stations. Might be a noise that you're familiar with. White noise, make sure that, hey, when you turn this on, that you've brought it down and then you can bring it up. And in fact, I've got it turned down on purpose for you guys, so when you do hit play, it doesn't just make you jump. Because that can be pretty annoying, that loud white noise. But we're going to listen to it for a second. You could hear. So what you're hearing right there, and I stopped it right there, you could see this EQ, this parametric EQ from Logic, which comes with Logic. It's called a channel EQ. Also has a built-in analyzer, which you could turn on and off right here. The analyzer shows you what is happening at which frequency. So notice there is information all the way across. White noise is actually every single frequency at equal amplitude. So you end up with something that looks like this on the analyzer. But white noise is perfect because it has every frequency for me to show you how an EQ works. Let's grab the graphic EQ first. Right now, I'll even bypass, well, no, I want to see it. So I'm going to leave that on, but I won't turn any knobs. So they're all at 0, as you guys can see. It's not affecting the signal whatsoever. Hit play. My graphic EQ, I can only select one knob, and that's going to be frequency. Selected, depending on, you can see here is 400. I bring it up. You can hear I brought up 400K, and notice on the analyzer, there's a peak now at 400K. So what I've done is increase the amplitude of just 401K, and notice that the next fader right here in this one, or on the other side, that's 315, and over here it's 500. Notice this bell shape, hence the bell of the EQ, or the bandwidth, is affecting on this graphic. Think of it as like the drawing right here. You're affecting only that main frequency, and then the rest kind of get tapered. And you guys can see it happening right here. You'll get to experience this as you guys follow along. Now, EQs are very powerful. I can sit here, select the frequency, or cut the frequency. Notice it's now pointing down. So I've removed that 1.6K. Yes, someone's pointing out generally you try to cut EQ over boosting. You are correct. Normally, think of it this way. You want to listen to the sound, and what part of the sound don't I like? Let's say that snare sound. I'll go ahead and stop for a second. That snare sound rings. You find the frequency that it's ringing at, and you remove it. That means the rest of the sound is going to be nice. You're going to have the bottom end, the body of the snare, plus the snare sounds itself on the higher end, versus having to sit there and try to bring up all the good stuff to take away that one bad thing. So it's better to take away the bad stuff away from the sound than it is, and then naturally all the good stuff will just come out and show up a lot better. I also use an art test. Screaming. Yeah. Yes, you could use your analyzer to help point out different things that you that is happening. I see feedback definitely. If you're live and you have an analyzer, a real-time analyzer, that's what an RTA is for you guys who don't know. It's a real-time analyzer. It's showing you what frequencies are happening in real time. You'll see a jump in it, and you can say, oh, that's where the feedback is. Grab that frequency, select it, of course, bring it down. With a graphic EQ, if you're live with an RTA, it's real simple. You just look for where that frequency is happening, grab that fader, and bring it down. Got rid of the feedback. You'll get, especially if you're doing a lot of live stuff, you get really fast at this. And after a while, you could even do it without the RTA. Your ears get trained to where you're able to, immediately, oh, that's 1K. Let me bring down 1K. Or, oops, that's 5K. I could tell immediately. And I bring it down. With the parametric, you have to go and sweep over to that frequency and bring it down, which I'll explain a little bit more about the knobs here as we try out stuff. But I was trying to bring up is you can actually use EQ as a way of sculpting your sound. You could change the sound drastically, make it something else. Like for instance, I did some ahead of time, and I'm going to open up this picture. If I grab, you can see it's basically doing octaves and bringing them across. Wow, I got to duplicate that. Let's see if I could grab all of them. Yes, perfect. All I did was click and drag across, and I selected them all. But notice 50. So I'm going to come over to 50. Bring that one up quite a bit. 100 hertz. So I look 100 hertz. Bring that one up a bit too. You can see the next one I chose is 200. So go over to 200. Oops, that's 160. Oops, I got two of them selected. Ah, come on, stop that. There we go. All right, 200. That one's not as much, and you can see they start sloping down. Now the next one I chose is 400. So I'm just kind of looking at this picture and duplicating it. Sometimes we'll send you pictures of stuff to help you try to figure stuff out. 800, the next one I see is the 1.6. So as you notice, I'm kind of creating a pattern. I'm creating harmonics. Where am I? 12. I haven't even hit 12. 6 point. Okay, I think I went down a little too much. And lastly, 12. All right, now I'm going to hit play, and you're going to notice what, remember the white noise sounded like. Now I've brought down some subtractive EQing and doing a little boosting here. Hit play. And let's bring it up a little bit now. Notice it sounds like what it sounds like inside of an airplane. If you've been on airplane flights, this is kind of the type of sound you'll hear. I'm able to change how that, white noise originally sounded like. Another one I did is right here, this, I call it locust swarm. You're able to change other frequencies. Let's see, bring down this 50, 200 is fully up, 400. I'm bringing up, it looks like the same frequencies. Notice now it added a lot more high frequency content, and it sounds like a bunch of bugs or swarm of locusts. So you're able to change stuff quite drastically. Try to make everything back to 0, or here, let's just kill this. I'm gonna ask you at times to just bypass. This is how you would bypass that EQ. If I hit play again, you'll hear the original sound. All right. And that was probably loud. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So you can actually change how things sound. Now you're changing the sound basically for good. This is why it's dynamically changing. You're dynamically changing levels at different frequencies. So hence why it's a dynamic processor, an EQ. And this is to make things sound better. You could also, I'll show you a little trick towards the end, how I can make something sound a lot more stereo and spread out. Like if I have a mono recording of a piano or coming out of a keyboard that comes out mono, I could make that actually sound quite stereo using EQ by EQing both the left and right separately. Just like a real piano, you hear more of the lower frequencies towards the left side, and the higher frequencies travel towards the right side. So you could use two different EQs and EQ them accordingly, and you would actually, when you listen back, it turned this mono recording into sounding very stereo and very wide because of your EQ. Now let's go into the parametric. Now again, all this stuff I'm kind of going over through will be in your instructions, so don't worry if you're not following along. This also, oops, come back. This also helps by, I've got a lot of screenshots for you guys. This is how you select a track. This is how you solo and unsolo a track. This is how you bypass. So I've put together a lot of screenshots for you guys to just follow along, and I explain everything as you guys go. So read through all of it. I also give you guys a lot of notes, giving you extra information. Oh, let's see about parametric EQs. So using that same track, we're going to mess around with the parametric EQ. The parametric EQ, I kind of talked about it a little bit. You have your first row is frequency, your second row is amplitude, and your third row is Q. And I've explained what each one of those do. So let's go ahead and let's turn up the amplitude. You can see, notice the bell shape is huge. That's because my Q is very wide. I could bring it inwards too. If I hit play now, you'll see how it changes the sound. And I can sweep it across. That type of sweep, I've actually used it to create sound effects. I needed to recreate the sound of a jet taking off. You're able to do those type of things. The turbines speed up. They, give you a higher whining sound. So you could actually do this type of stuff all with EQs. The other thing is, I'm right now explaining to you guys just graphic EQ and parametric. We're also going to cover, and you'll see this in the instructions. You'll notice I actually put together a picture for you guys. Where is it? Here it is. Oops. There we go. Okay, that graphic EQ, or I should say parametric EQ, the one that's called channels EQ, notice that we actually have 4 parametric EQs. You have the 3 parameters. You have a high shelving EQ, which I'll be explaining next, and also a low pass filter, as well as a low shelving EQ and a high pass filter. So this thing actually has quite a bit of strength within it. It has 1, 2, 3, plus the 4. So that's 6 right there, 7, 8 different things you could change within the sound in one plugin. Close that. Oh, close that one too. So you're looking at this guy right here, or you were looking at that. So again, here's the different, these are the parametrics. You could turn them on and off, of course. Here is the shelving. This is the low shelving and the high shelving. Notice this little symbol. What it does is it kind of looks like a shelf. It's shelving frequencies, and I'll explain a little bit more. And then lastly, you have to turn them on, but there's your low pass filter, and that would be a high pass filter. It looks like I had a parameter already on there. All right, so let's go ahead and hit play, and I'm going to show you guys some stuff with the EQ. So if I have the white noise, I'm going to have you guys do this type of stuff. It's just kind of play around with the parameters. I'll explain in the thing. and you get to hear all this stuff. Now that's the parametric EQ. I can boost. Control how. You can see I have quite a bit of control over the sound. I can really control it quite a bit. The next thing is, let's see about these shelving EQs. Now they're in here. You'll notice should be the third thing we're hitting. And this walks you through. It kind of shows you all the stuff I was just doing. A little bit more explanation. Slow down. All right. So third thing you're going to do on this is the shelving EQ. If I hit play and I change the shelf, notice what happens here. Remember on the parametric we had an actual Q that was the bandwidth. Notice this has only like one side and then it shelves off from that point on. This is considered the 3 dB roll off of the frequency. So right now you can see I have it at 1040 hertz. So in other words 1.04K to be exact. And I'm boosting. Now I'm cutting. So you can see how I literally could shelve off from that one frequency, shelve off all the other frequencies. So you notice the big difference between that parametric that gave me the capability of really narrowing it down and having a bandwidth. The shelving, what it does is basically it points towards, like, let's say your whole mix sounds a little muddy and you're wanting to brighten it up a little bit because you use a sample or something. I can brighten it up just a little bit from whatever point I feel it needs it. Let's see, bandwidth is actual. The actual frequency is the top one. That's where this ball is located at. You can see it's changing it now. It's at 1340, 320 hertz, and on the shelving one, it doesn't have a bandwidth per se, but it has how much of a slope this is. That was the next thing I was going to explain. You could notice I could slope it quite a bit or widen the slope. The graphic representation that Logic gives you is great because you're able to see what's happening also. Yes, John, go ahead and ask your question. I see John has a question. Here, I could open up your mic if you wish. Where are you? Ah, there you are. All right. Go ahead, John. If you want to turn on your mic and ask.
Hey, I just had a quick question. I seen when you, like about 3 minutes ago, you selected the 500 range, but I seen that you dragged it over to more of the higher range, like more of where 15K is at.
Yes.
Now, when you did that, were you still moving the frequencies from the 500 range, even though you dragged it over to the right?
No. Like for instance, here on the shelving EQ, let's say I'm over here. I am not affecting any of these frequencies whatsoever. If I hit play, you'll see, remember, this is the white noise all the way across. The boost is only happening here.
Okay, because I seen you had clicked the green one right next to 500.
All right, let's go there.
That over.
This one is a parametric EQ. So if I boost it, and let's widen the Q, its area, like right now, it's at 780. It's going to affect 500 all the way to about, on this side, you'll see it's just after 1K. So let's say 1.2K. So that's my bandwidth. So it depends on what parameter you have here. I could tighten it up so it's literally at 100. It's almost like a needle. So it's going to be almost like it's surgically removing that, or excuse me, boosting in this case, that frequency. So if I had a bad noise I hated, I want to get it out, I could cut it out, give it minus 24 dB. And the cool thing with these parametrics is I could overlap. So let's say that, let's see, what do we choose? 780? I can go to 780, same thing. bring it down 24, same Q, and because they are overlapping, we actually end up with 48 dB of gain reduction. So if you have a sound that you want to get rid of and it's still there, you could still bring it down even more by layering another parametric EQ right on top of it with the same parameters.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Joshua, I had the same question, so cool. You got that one. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to what I was doing. Let's say, let's zero these guys out. If you hold down Option and click on anything, it jumps back to its original, default, you might say. You can see they're kind of spread out. Let me default all of them. You'll see this is the way that they normally would be. And of course, my gain on this one. I was just showing you the high shelving. So you can see how I can affect stuff. Now let's go over to the low shelving. That's the opposite. See, I'm basically getting rid of the low frequencies, but I'm shelving them. So it doesn't kill them completely. It just brings it down from that 890 hertz. From that point, basically brings it down by the number of dB that you brought it down. So I did 24 dB. Let's bring it up a little bit. So I still have low frequency information, but it's all brought down minus 6.5 dB. And those are decibels, just in case you guys don't know what a dB is. If I want to boost, you guys see how I'm able to control this. Now the shelf, again, controls from that frequency, and it shelves. If it's a low shelf, of course, it's affecting all the low frequencies. If it's a high shelf, it's affecting the higher frequencies from that frequency point. And then lastly, we have these filters. Filters, you may have heard filters, and as soon as I show you this, you guys will go, oh, so that's how they do a lot of this music. A lot of dance music, some hip hop, and some other stuff uses this type of effect. They're filters. For many years, people use old analog synthesizers, run audio through them to filter out stuff, and then filters became really popular also just as EQs. But let me turn this on. Here is what we call a high-pass filter. In other words, it's only allowing the high frequencies to pass. Here is, instead of being your amplitude, you can see I'm changing how many dB per octave. So a 48 dB per octave filter would be like this. And if you guys are used to synthesizers, you may know, for instance, Moog EQ. Moog synthesizers use a 48 dB per octave type filter. If you're using like old Oberheims, it's a 12 dB per octave. It just gives you a slightly different sound. Now, I can't really boost, as you guys can see. It doesn't really do anything. But if you do boost, which is right here, if you've used synthesizers, they call this a resonant peak. Same thing with this EQ. You could basically resonate at the frequency that you've chosen. So right now it's 1,900 hertz. It's boosting that single point where afterwards it just knocks off everything else and it kills it. It brings it down so low that we don't hear any information happening in those lower frequencies. Now that's the high pass filter. Let me go ahead and mute that. Let's go to the low pass filter. This is the one that you mainly hear. Can you grab it? Imagine a beat playing and it's all low frequency, and then it opens up and you hear all the instruments and all the sounds. With this, you could even make it, if you're listening. Oh, come on. There we go. Imagine waves. And all these parameters that I'm changing in real time, kind of swishing back and forth, you can actually automate this stuff. So if you needed to, you could create wave sounds if you needed to without having to go to the ocean, which, yes, we do that through automation. And every parameter in Logic is automatable. In other words, I can control anything over time, just basically recording my movement or entering it in manually. You'll learn more about automation in a later class. Right now, I just touch on it just so you understand what it's capable of doing. But give that the resident peak. So you've probably heard that in a lot of the dance music. I know it's white noise underneath, but same thing. I could have a beat playing. And in fact, let's do that. Since I've kind of covered all of the different things within the parametric EQ and filters, as well as the graphic, I'm going to close these. And afterwards, you guys will notice as you run through everything and you get to experience it, first we're showing you so you can really hear it. Here's the high pass, low pass filters that I was talking about. And as you continue, where are you? There we are. Track 2, recorded music. So now, let's play around with some real music. I'm going to hit solo on this track. When I de-solo this track, you notice it goes back to mute. I hit play. I'm going to bring this guy back up a little bit. Now, that's the... oops, wrong one. You notice, and here I've got the same EQs. And channel EQ, if you just click on them, they open up. This song that you're hearing is actually the one that you get to mix down in the mix sign-in. But now I can sit here and play around and see how I could change certain things. So imagine after something's been mixed, a mastering engineer could actually grab a really good EQ and sit there and, okay, well, let's bring up the vocal a little bit. He could actually touch on certain frequencies, or, you know what, this guy in the studio, they recorded this and it has a bad hum. I can remove that stuff. You could actually go and almost, like with a surgical tool and remove certain things. When it's the whole mix, it's a lot harder, but when you have individual EQs on individual tracks, you could really clean up your mix. And that's how powerful an EQ is. EQ is probably one of the most important things and most common things that an engineer will use. The second will be both gating and compression. But let's see. Let's say I want to bring up the snare. I listen.
Yes, I do. Every day.
I could sit here and sweep across.
Every day. Oh yeah. Wanna thanks and praise Him. And I stay flying away.
Let's say I like that. And, well, of course, it's too loud right now. It rings too much. So I just bring it down a little bit. But I just boosted that snare because it's in that area. Now, remember, when you're playing with the whole song, you're also affecting all other stuff that's on that track. If I had just the snare, I would be able to bring up the certain parts of the snare that I like, or, again, take out. And it's better to take out the bad stuff out of that snare. All the good stuff will come ringing through because your attention to that one bad frequency is now taken away. You've EQ'd it out. But you're able to mess around with your parameters with an actual recorded song. So that's why we set this up this way. We first have you so you can hear every frequency, then go back and play around with the song. Then we actually show you this is a square wave, so it's just a tone. Close this. Open up, let's just open up this guy. Notice the analyzer. What we're looking at there is a fundamental frequency, which is the 100 Hertz. And in fact, you can see the name of that track will be on top of the channel EQ. So whatever EQ you have open, make sure that it's the one you want to mess around with. but 100 hertz, and then you hear the harmonics. Second harmonic, third harmonic, fourth harmonic, so forth, all the way across. Now, that's what a square wave is. It's basically a fundamental frequency with all its harmonics. And a sawtooth wave is certain harmonics, but a sine wave is just a single frequency. In other words, it only has a fundamental frequency. So if I wanted to take this square wave and turn it into a sine wave, real quick way to do it would be, hey, I could filter out all the other frequencies. And there's my 100 hertz. Bring it right up to it. I could even boost a little bit right there at that 100. Now I hear basically a 100 hertz sine wave. You have just eliminated all the harmonics from the square wave and turned it into a sine wave. So very powerful. Your EQs are very powerful. I could literally change stuff. The assignment stuff, the assignment instructions, of course, everything I've kind of covered. It walks you through, lets you play around with each one of these. I tell you to do different things and listen. So use your ears a lot. You have to use... Okay, I'm missing the click. Hold on, one question. I've got to see a question there, but use your ears a lot. Your ears are going to be very important when EQing because you're going to be listening for stuff. The analyzer works great to help, but get more used to just using your ears because your ears are what's going to tell you this sounds good. Just because I see what looks like a problem there and I edit it out, you may be taking out a wonderful part of that sound. So definitely, I can't stress this enough, use your ears. That's what's going to really make you guys good engineers and producers, is your hearing. Okay, so the next one, as you guys can see, let me scroll down. I also tell you to also hit the, the compare or the bypass so you can hear the difference of what you've done. One other thing I like to point out for you guys is when EQing, I like to solo the sound, EQ it a bit, unsolo it in the full mix, and listen to how that EQing that you're doing is working with the full mix. Because I can EQ every single sound perfect where I like how it sounds individually, but when I unsolo everything and play all the sounds, you will find sometimes that, oh wow, I EQ'd everything at 3K. They're all stepping on each other now. They actually sound muffled around that frequency. So your EQs can be used, and you'll learn more about this in your mix class, as ways of making holes, you might say, for instruments. If you've got multiple instruments all at the same frequency, they kind of step all over each other and it's hard to distinguish what each sound is. But if you EQ them slightly different, you make holes, remember how to dip out certain things, then it's like you no longer, and if you guys could look at me in the screen, this is the way I usually like to explain it. If you have one sound like this and another sound that's right behind it, a little lower in level, well, I won't be able to see that second sound. But if I EQ it slightly different, now I could see both sounds or hear both sounds in this case. So using your EQ, you could actually add more separation to each individual sound. So that when you start mixing, you'll still be able to hear every single sound. Very important, this is what makes your music sound very clean and clear, and you could hear every single sound. I was always complimented on how clear and crisp everything sounded with my mixes, and it was because I understand how to use the EQs and how to not make stuff step on each other with the EQ. Now, if I'm working with, I will give the one example that this won't happen, is, well, if I've got two sounds that are trying to be combined, then I want them to blend in a way that they sound like one single sound versus, two separate sounds. So there you might want to EQ similarly. I'm getting individual tracks underneath input. All right, I think I'm lost with that question. That might be asked to another student. All right, so let's see, where are we? So I've gone through all three of the tracks. Now, let's scroll down there. There's the 100 hertz. Come on, scroll. I think I've got a lot of stuff happening. That's why it's doing this. Oh, there it is. Ah, slow down. Now it doesn't want to stop scrolling. I'm trying to find track 4. There we go. Track 4. That's going to be your applied EQ lesson. This is where we get to let you loose, you might say. And what I want you to do is, you're going to hear me speaking on this track. There you go.
By using your EQ, you're able to remove unwanted frequencies and make the vocal clearer.
Now, hopefully you guys are using either headphones right now or you have speakers, because your little tiny speakers on the Mac unfortunately won't be able to show you both problems. There's two problems in there. There's actually a very low frequency hum, and you'll hear that high pitch like whine or whistle. Those are two problems that have actually happened on recordings. I have gotten projects where stuff was recorded and the studio had a ground loop problem. So it ended up in the recording. I'd have to edit that out. Well, I can actually take it off completely, but then there's chances I could destroy the vocal at the same time. So understanding how to use your EQ, you're going to use your tools to remove those and try to keep my voice as intact as possible. And there's a way of doing it. I can actually make this sound very clear, where that low frequency hum, which I can't produce that type of low frequency, so think about a filter maybe. A filter could take that out without any problem. So I can filter out that low frequency hum without touching my vocal. And then that high pitched squeal, well, yeah, I speak with some higher frequencies, so that might be in there, but I'm able to actually use a parametric EQ and EQ out those high frequency problems. So you're going to be cutting on both these, and I want you to remove those two problems. After you've done this, as you read the instructions, we want you to take a screenshot, okay, showing, now I don't have it set here because otherwise I'd be giving you the answer, but I want you showing the parameters that you use. In other words, remove those two frequency problems. It explains here about the different things. The high frequency also, just to tell you guys, that could come from, for instance, a studio or where you recorded at, either had a TV monitor nearby or the fluorescent tubes. In other words, fluorescent lighting can put a high-pitched squeal like that. And even some of the LED ones, it all depends on the power supply that they have built into those units. Those high-frequency things will actually end up in your recording, and you may have to edit them out without losing your vocal. So remove those two things, and then you take a screenshot of it completed, like I was showing you. Basically, the screenshot should look kind of like this. You'll see that you have that track soloed, selected, and then your EQ opened up. And the other thing is you're going to bounce this down. So once I've had the, let's see, here, I'm going to just open this up. I've done my parameters, here I'm just going to do some crazy parameters. Of course, this is not the answer, because this would sound horrible. I'm boosting up that problem there, but nevertheless, okay, I'm done EQing. All I need to do is, if this is selected, this is what the bounce area is going to be. So it's going to bounce this complete thing down. Or I could actually just select the audio files, hit shift, and you could select multiples. But I grab that, and now I go bounce, which I've kind of shown you guys this project or selection, then name it. The other method to bounce, if you guys remember, is if you have your output shown right here, there's a little button right here called bounce. Hit bounce, and immediately you get what you need. And for this one, we're just going to have you do an MP3 again, and high quality, hit OK, you bounce it down. It's just that EQ'd vocal now. Now, one good habit, I always like to tell you guys good habits because, I've learned from experience. I could bounce this down, have the MP3 sitting on my desktop and I don't check it. I send it to the person and they call me saying, "What the hell is this? It's blank. You sent me, 5 minutes of audio of nothing." Or you sent me only the vocal. Where's the rest of the song? Because I accidentally sold something or whatever. You always want to go back and play that MP3 that you bounce just to make sure. It's a very good habit to get into. Bounce it down, then go and listen to the MP3. And let's see if I've got one here. Oh, actually, yeah, the song that I was playing earlier. That's a mix I did. Whoa. All right, so here's an MP3. If you just click on it, it'll start. It'll open it up in iTunes, or if I just hit select it like it is, hit spacebar, and you'll see it opens up. Spacebar to close it. So it just kind of opens it up temporarily, and I can hear to make sure that the audio is correct and what I want to send the person, and that it sounds good as well. So always get in the habit of listening to your bounces just to make sure that, yes, everything's good. It's working. The next thing is track number 5. Oh, and just remember, you're going to be using both that screenshot and the audio file to be turned in for this assignment. So those are part of the deliverables for this assignment. With track 5, you're going to be doing the same type of thing, but now it's a music track. And in this one, you guys can see, if you read through here, you get the problem was that whoever mixed it, you're going to be a little bit of a mastering engineer now, but whoever mixed it, let's go to it. Solo.
Praises people.
Gonna open up the EQ, and as the instructions read, the balance the mix's high end to fit better with the low end and mid frequencies. Then you're gonna be using a shelving EQ to fix this. Now, the mix is basically brought up very high, and you just have to grab that shelving EQ and use your parameters, which you now know how to do, and try to blend up a little bit better where it's not so bright. We did it bright on purpose for you guys to go in and try to fix the problem. So that's the other thing. You're going to have to do that one, then send the screenshot again, and also the screenshot, and also the actual bounce down of the audio. And here, from this point on, it kind of gives you a little bit extra stuff. Bouncing down audio or mix walks you through how to do that. Okay, keep going down a little bit. I've literally walked you step by step, and it tells you, okay, select desktop, name it. This is how you get the thing. Then lastly hit bounce, and that's how you're going to repeat this for track 5. Screenshots. You don't know how to take a screenshot? It's right here in the explanation. Your Logic session, same thing. I've walked you through every single part just to make sure you guys get this stuff. And at the end of every assignment, you'll see I always have some sort of thing telling you what we're looking for. As well as also, I've even copied the grading checklist to the assignment instructions so that you can check them before you actually, turn in all the deliverables or everything you need for that assignment.